All right, here's the next one. This one should be quicker than the last one. Uh, so we're going to talk about solving equations and inequalities using a graph on your calculator. And it's something you've done it before with parabolas, and we've done it with lines for a while. We've been doing it in a lot of different sections, so it shouldn't be totally new. But we're going to see how to graph absolute value stuff on your calculator. So let's use a graph of y equals the absolute value of the quantity 3x minus 6 to solve this equation. And the same principle as before works, which is that we want to find what values of x make this true, make this equation here true. And in order to do that, we're going to use the fact that on the graph, 3x minus 6 and y are the same thing. The absolute value of 3x minus 6 and y are the same thing. So this is essentially the same as asking the question, what values of x makes y equal to 9? Because on the graph, the absolute value of 3x minus 6 is represented by the y coordinate. So same idea as before, but also I should just mention that we can't use the techniques from the first video. Remember the first video, we talked about this important fact. The absolute value of x minus a is a distance from x to a. And we use that to solve equations that were things like the absolute value of x minus 10, or the absolute value of x plus 2, which you can write as the absolute value of x minus negative 2, etc. But this didn't say anything about if there's a 3x here. So it's hard to turn this thing with a 3x into an equation about the distance from just x to something. So we can't really use that. I mean, we could, but it would be trickier. So we're just going to do it with a graph. So get your graphing calculator out. We're going to go to the y equals and type in this thing we're going to graph, y equals absolute value. Here's where the absolute value is. It's in the math menu. So press math and go over to num, the second little menu within that, and then abs. That's not short for abdominal muscles, it's short for absolute value. That's number 1. We're going to use that. So just press enter. So again, this was math button, and then after you press the math button, go to the right to get to the absolute value function. And there's that, and we're going to type 3x minus 6 and graph it. So that's what the graph of this looks like. It makes this V shape. Absolute value functions always have some kind of V-shaped thing going on. And we want to see where does that intersect y equals 9. So we also need to do y equals 9 here. And we want to know, what are the values of x that make the points on the absolute value function have this y coordinate of 9. And so to do that, we hit second calc. Intersect is number 5. So it asks you for the two curves, just hit enter twice. And then it asks for a guess, just move pretty close to where you think the solution is and hit enter. And that's what we got. If x is -1, that will make y equal to 9. And you could also check that. It's a good idea to always plug in your value of x into the actual equation to make sure it works. I just paused it for a moment to write the answer over here. Then to get the other one, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to make a guess that's closer to the other point when it asks for a guess. So second calc, number 5 is intersect. Oh, it asks for a first curve, and the second curve, just hit enter twice. Now scooch that cursor over until it's closer to this point, and then it should tell you the other intersection point, which is at x equals 5 and y equals -9. So that's your other solution. That's the other value of x that makes this work. It is x equals 5. So that has two solutions. For part B, let's look at that. You might know the answer already if you were paying close attention to the previous video. I mean, we can see what happens though if we go to the y equals, because we want to know what value of x makes this whole thing, the y, equal to -2 this time. So I type in -2 and look at the graph here. There's y equals -2, and there's no intersection here because of the fact that the absolute value results, the y coordinates of these, are always greater or equal to 0. That means the whole thing is above the x-axis, always positive y coordinates, which means they can't be equal to -2. So you can see there's no intersection, and B has no solution. So I'll just write that out here. And that's generally true whenever you have negative numbers on the other side of absolute value equations, because the absolute value result on the left side is never going to give you a negative result. Here's another example of the same kind of thing. It's just how do you answer the question if it's an inequality with less than or greater than? So we're going to do exactly the same process here. We want to know, we're going to graph y equals the thing on the left, and then we're going to see what values of x make y greater than 0.5 for the first one. So clear, what we had before. So it's going to be x over 4. Oh wait, that's not right. It needs absolute value. Okay, press math, go to num. We want abs. X over 4 plus 1. All right, and then on the other side, we're going to graph y equals 0.5. And let's see what that looks like. And it's a little hard to see. It's always a good idea to manipulate your windows so you can see what's going on a little bit better. Here the problem is the whole part of the graph, it's all kind of flat, and we don't need all these big values of y. So we could make the y max be like 4 maybe instead of it being 10. So that is a good way to help you see things better. And let's say the y min could be, I don't know, -1 to make it a little bit narrower. Now you can see it a little bit better. But anyways, we need to know what are these two x values that make the absolute value part on the left side of this equation equal to 0.5. So we'll get that using second calc number 5 is intersect. Just press enter twice for your two curves. Scooch it over to make a guess, and you get x is -2. That gives you one intersection point. For the other one, second calc 5, press enter twice. Scooch your guess over closer to the second intersection point here, and we get exactly -6. So those are the two values of x that make the absolute value of x over 4 plus 1 equal to 0.5. But let's see, for this first part, A, we want to know what x makes it greater than 0.5. So in other words, we need to see what x makes y, because this whole thing is y on the absolute value graph, what x makes that greater than 0.5. And that is happening at all the points where the y coordinates on the absolute value are above the y equals 0.5 line. And so the solution is the x coordinates. So that's going to be, here we have -2 on, and over here it's -6 is this intersection point. So it's going to be, we could write it in interval notation. We could say from negative infinity up to negative 6 is one part, union with negative 2 up to infinity. Gives you that stuff I just shaded there. So I'm using this graph, but of course both of these results, whether you're talking about this point or this point, are important for both parts A and part B. But I'm just using this one to show the answer for A. For part B, we want to know what x makes y less than or equal to 0.5. So that's going to happen at the point on the absolute value graph that where the y coordinate is less than 0.5, and that's right here. And that is happening between negative 6 and negative 2. So this time the endpoints here are included. X can be equal to negative 0.2, negative 2. It could be equal to negative 6. That will make it exactly the whole thing is exactly equal to 0.5, and that's okay. So you could write that in interval form as the interval from negative 6 up to negative 2, like so. All right. So here's the exercise for you to do. I will leave you to it. But before you stop the video, let me just point something out. There's some stuff in the book here that we don't need. The book uses this algebraic method of solving these, where you use the definition of absolute value as like this piecewise function thing, and then set up two equations, and then solve each of those two equations. But that only works when the number on the other side is positive. And then they kind of repeat this here, and then they give you a bunch of stuff to memorize, and these which you can use just to solve these same kinds of things. But we don't need that because you can just do it with a graph, with your graphing calculator. And that's a much better way to do these. And it's a method that works for solving all kinds of other equations and inequalities too. So here's one for you to practice. This video came out long again. Sorry about that. But hopefully you're working on this in spring break and you got plenty of time. Not so much. I already ran out of time on spring break and I'm somehow busy. I don't know how that works. Anyways, I will see you later.